One of the most common questions we get on our YouTube channel is, how did you learn Japanese? I'm actually conversational in several languages, including Spanish and Korean, but given our focus on video games and specifically Japanese RPGs, most people out there are really curious about learning Japanese specifically. The benefits of learning Japanese include early access to some games like Persona 5, exclusive access to other games, and a deeper understanding of dialogue and story in games that were translated from Japanese, and specifically older games. So here's my guide to learning the language while living outside of Japan. I can't remember many of the resources that I used when I was a beginner, but these are the ones that really stuck out to me. I devote about 2 hours a day studying languages, and depending on how much time you can devote to learning the language, some of these tools may be more or less useful than others. My method is to learn grammar and basic vocabulary for the first month or so. I just listen to the language, go over general words and grammar structure of the language, and try to piece together how the language works, as well as become proficient in the writing system. Don't worry about kanji for now, just worry about hiragana and katakana. Then I move on to vocab. I find a list of the 2,000 most common words used in whatever language, and then I study as many of those per day as I can. I allocate a lot of time for this, so it's usually around 30 per day for me, but if you can do at least 10 or 15 per day, that's very good. Fill your head with as much useful vocabulary as you can. After you have the writing system, basic grammar, and core vocabulary down, then comes the fun part. Use the language. Make mistakes, talk to people, watch TV shows, watch YouTube videos, watch movies. Subtitles are okay to use on your first watch through, but try to watch the series or movie or video again, but this time without subtitles. This time, have a dictionary app and get ready to look up every word that you hear that you don't recognize. There's lots of forms and words seem to run together, so try not to get discouraged. It takes time to really understand and separate words in order to look them up. After you watch the show, go to your dictionary app and copy the words that you searched into a website like Quizlet. I'll go over these later. Study that set the very next day. Watch the show again, or watch a different show, or talk to the person again, or a different person. For example, Polar Bear Cafe is a really funny show that speaks relatively slowly and uses easier grammar and vocabulary. Try to look for shows directed at children. You can go ahead and watch Japanese shows and such in all 3 stages, but the last one is where you really need to make it a priority. After that, you can consider yourself as able to speak Japanese. Now, it'll take a lot of time to really become fluent in speaking it, and that may be difficult to achieve without going to Japan, which I guess would probably be the next logical step, step 4, if you're really serious about Japanese. But at least you'll be comfortable with Japanese by this point. You can go ahead and begin to learn kanji as well if you want to read manga or play video games in Japanese, but that'll take time. You can download emulators and ROMs to play Japanese games too. Very fun if you can read well enough. The method I've just listed has worked for me in several languages, though as a disclaimer here, not everybody's the same. Certain methods that I found less useful may work very well for you depending on your level of motivation, and that's the important part. You have to want to learn Japanese. Come up with whatever reason you can for why you want to learn it, and you have to gear your studies around you and what you're interested in, because that's what's going to keep you motivated to continue learning the language as it gets tough, and especially in that intermediate stage where you feel like you're not making progress anymore, it gets real tough. Now, specifically, number 1, the very first thing I do when studying a new language is the Pimsleur language program. There are 3 levels to Japanese. It's, I think, 90 lessons in all. It's a game changer. It's better than, in my opinion, things like Rosetta Stone, Busuu, Duolingo, any of that other stuff. Those are good, but they won't really get you immersed and get you the skills that you really need, I think, in a quick enough time frame. It takes a significantly longer to do one of the other methods than to use the Pimsleur language program. So I highly recommend the Pimsleur program. Problem being, it's a tad on the expensive end. However, it can often be found for free at your local library. Many libraries have copies of the Pimsleur language program, and I suggest you run by and check really quick if your local library has it. before pulling the trigger and purchasing these for however many hundreds of dollars. The next one I've got here is JapanesePod101.com. Now, these guys are great and their podcasts are free, but you'll need to pay for additional features like flashcards and whatnot, but the free podcasts do a great job of explaining Japanese grammar. Next, we have Quizlet.com. Now, this system is wonderful. You can see some of my other decks that I've made here. I've been learning Spanish and Korean, but I actually kind of have to go through all of my Samoan. Guess what I was able to kind of dig up here? Let me just take you to this website really quick called americajin.me/Final Fantasy VII English Japanese script. Now, this will all be in the description, so don't worry about it. But if you scroll down here a little bit, there is a download for specifically this Excel doc right here. Now, this doc is, just look at it for a second. You have the English, a Romanized Japanese, and then the actual kana in Japanese. You have the makings of a perfect system for generating flashcards. So what I did is I took rows C and A and used them to generate flashcards within Quizlet. It's incredible what Quizlet's able to do. But I was able to generate tons and tons of flashcards for Final Fantasy VII specifically, so that I can study just the vocabulary from that game in particular. The next one we got here is Crunchyroll.com. Lots of anime and some live action dramas as well. Though if you elect to watch a drama, be sure you aren't watching something in Korean, because Crunchyroll actually does have some live action Korean stuff in it, in addition to Japanese. So don't learn the wrong language here if you're looking to learn one. I speak Korean. Wonderful. I love it. But if you're trying to learn Japanese, be careful. So I also watch Polar Bear Cafe here on Crunchyroll. They have it. And that's where I really got introduced to the show. It's just wonderful, guys. Watch Polar Bear Cafe if you want to learn Japanese. It's just a great show all around. Next, we've got this website here. It's mov3.co. Now, this is the website I go to in order to watch Japanese television. This is for an advanced level specifically, but you click on the links here, and anyways, it comes here, and you're able to stream Japanese television straight from here in the United States. So it's a really great tool, and this is something that I use often. I have Japanese TV just on in my house all the time. And it's constantly just streaming just what's happening here. And the unfortunate thing is this is live, and so often you're getting the midnight Japanese programs, because if you live in the West, the time zones don't exactly align. But this is still a wonderful resource for hearing natural Japanese spoken. Another app that I use often is called, and this is just a simple, kanji kind of mixture that I posted into Google right here, but it's to illustrate this little, what do you call this? This little add-on right here on Chrome. I have something called Rikai-chan, and you click it, and it does something pretty cool when it works. It takes all of your kanji, which is the complicated characters that are Chinese characters that really can be difficult to read. There's thousands of them. And it translates them, well, it gives you the reading for these kanji in what is called hiragana, which is, there's like 46 hiragana. It's just the typical phonetic alphabet for Japanese. And so you're able to, you can see if I click this here, everything goes back to how it was. And when you click it again, it automatically inserts what the reading is for each of these complex kanji symbols. Very useful, but it's easy to kind of use it as a crutch and to rely on just the Rikai-chan to kind of the furigana to read all of the kanji, but then you don't actually learn the kanji. So I challenge you to actually learn the kanji and to only use this plugin when you need to. And if you do use it, take those words, just copy paste into Quizlet, and create your own flashcard set. Language exchanges are extremely important, but usually cost money. So you should download the free app Hello Talk. It can easily connect you with people in Japan who are trying to learn English. It's a great coincidence of wants, if you will. Even if you're on the beginner end, this app is crazy useful. Kanji can sometimes be hard to read, but there are aids that can help transcribe the sentences or read it aloud to you so that you can get an idea of what's being said. In fact, there are tons of features on this app that can help you. It is a must-have. You can even call people on it, though the system isn't all that good yet. I usually get their info on Line or KakaoTalk or Skype or WhatsApp, and we talk there. So some YouTube channels that I subscribe to would be one, Easy Languages. Now, Easy Languages is great. Let me just show you this link right here. We've got street conversations in Japanese. Now, these are wonderful because they're fully transcribed in both languages, Japanese and English. And you've got, I guess this would be 19 different street conversations talking about just typical stuff. Valentine's Day, men, slang words, love, what makes you happy. I mean, they just go out and talk to random Japanese people at random places in Japan about this kind of stuff. And it's very conversational. It's very natural sounding. It's very, very good method to learn natural Japanese. Shimajiro, the little tiger kid. So great show. Look up Japanese children's TV shows because those are the ones that speak Japanese very slowly and deliberately and don't use crazy vocabulary so that you can really understand what's going on and get used to hearing the language like that. And then there's one called Nihongo ga dekimasu. And Nihongo ga dekimasu is wonderful. There's a link for it in the description, but I'm not going to show it because I don't know that it's actually supposed to be on YouTube. Anyways, but it's there. And you guys can watch it and learn from it, and it's wonderful, and it's great. I think it's a great tool. It's all in Japanese. It's for beginners, but it's all in Japanese. There's also one more thing. I don't know if you guys have seen this this little bookshelf behind me. It's actually full of a lot of language learning books. So let me find one for you real quick. This friend right here is called A Dictionary of Basic Japanese Grammar. Now, this book is wonderful. This is one of the best books for learning grammar in Japanese. This is a book that I highly, highly recommend. We're going to move on now to some of the apps that I use when learning Japanese. Now, I don't know if all these are available for the iPhone. I have an Android personally, and so this works for what I have, but I'm not sure if all of these will be available for the iPhone as well. So my apologies if that ends up being the case. The very first one is called Human Japanese. Now, it's beginner, but it helps you to learn grammar. I've got a few others here. NHK Easy Japanese, it reads things out loud for you. Probably puts it down to elementary school level Japanese. And so these articles that would take you a long time to read in kanji, you're able to read them and get the gist of it through this Easy Japanese app that's developed by NHK. So, and NHK is a big news broadcaster in Japan. They're actually publicly funded. So it's a wonderful app, and they update it every single day with multiple news stories in an easy to understand Japanese form. It'll help you kind of get going in the language. Then NHK also has their own Japanese lessons where they just teach you Japanese. Very conversational and very basic. Very good. You need a Japanese dictionary. You have to have one, and we have several. The problem is the best one that I found is JED, and JED was last updated. Gosh, let me look at this here. When was it last updated? 2013. It's been a while, and I will tell you what, that app no longer works on my phone, and it's a real shame. It's really unfortunate. But whoever owns this app, you know, let him know that you kind of want him to update it. But I'm pretty sure he's been contacted many times. It's the best that I had found up until this point. But for anybody who has a phone that's just a little beyond what this was programmed for and that this app maybe no longer works for it, there's a Japanese dictionary called Akebi, and Akebi is very good as well, and it can save all of your entries and export them to be used as flashcards, which is one of the most important things to look for when determining which Japanese English dictionary you want to rely on. So then we've got Japanese listening practice, Crunchyroll, Kotoba-chan to learn vocabulary, Kanji no Owari. Kanji no Owari is wonderful because it's a Japanese role-playing style game, but you're learning kanji the whole time, and depending on how quickly you can answer what kanji is what that shows up on the screen, your character has a sword and he'll, you know, defeat his enemies, and you're only allowed so many mistakes, otherwise you have to redo the level again. It's a fun gamified way of learning kanji. And it's actually really effective. You end up understanding at least the basic readings and definitions of some of the more common kanji. If you want to learn more complex kanji, I believe it actually ends up costing money. But it's a wonderful app, really fun. Then we have Anki Droid. And Anki Droid, where do I start with Anki Droid? Anki Droid is probably the most important tool that you can have to continue furthering your learning of Japanese. So it's a flashcard app, But it is the best flashcard app in the world because it reads things out loud. You have audio. It shows it to you. It's called spaced repetition software. And that means that when you answer the flashcard, meaning you knew it, you kind of knew it, or you didn't really know it, it then puts it back in the queue to show up again, depending on where you answered it. If you knew it really well, you may not see that card again for a few more days. If you answer that you didn't know a card at all, it's going to show back up within 1 or 2 minutes. If you say that, I kind of know it, but, not super well, it's going to show up 10 minutes later. Every card shows up until you say, good, I know this word. And then the next day, it brings to you those cards that you maybe struggled with the day before. And it's wonderful software because it keeps you honest. It keeps you learning the stuff that you need to learn because the stuff you already know gets pushed so far back down the queue that you rarely see them. I have certain flashcards in my Anki Droid deck that I'm not going to see for a year because I know them well enough. At that point, you probably just delete them, but honestly, it takes no time for me to answer them anymore, so it doesn't really make a difference. This is what I end up using 30 flashcards per day for. So Anki Droid is absolutely wonderful, and it has a ton of what they call shared decks. Now this one right here, Japanese Core 2000, Step 1, Listening Sentence Vocab. There are 10 steps to this. I believe there's 10, maybe there are more. But it's absolutely wonderful because it's got sentences, it's got vocab, and it's got the English to Japanese plus the Japanese to English, and the sentences help you to contextualize the grammar. It is an absolutely wonderful deck to study from. And then it sets you up for the Japanese Core 6000, which is the more advanced version of this deck that will really kind of put everything together and get you actually understanding real spoken Japanese the way that it actually sounds. So this is the way to go. And what I've done with this app, because Anki Droid is great, you download it on your computer and it's run on a Python script, but it's fully customizable. You can kind of do anything that you want with it. So what I did is I plugged it into my software here, and I took out the vocab and the English to Japanese and Japanese to English, so I just had the Japanese sentences. And then I took the text out from the top, so I couldn't read it. I just had to listen to it and know what it was saying based on what I was listening to. I don't recommend that for everybody, but that's something that I was doing just to help better my listening skills. And so this app is great. It's super customizable, and you can do just so much with it. And I love that these are separated because I typically don't have more than a few hundred flashcards in a deck anyways, because the higher it gets, the more chance of, if you miss a day or two, your backlog gets queued up pretty dang quick. And so this is the kind of thing where you've got to do it every single day. Otherwise, you're going to get a little bit overwhelmed at how many cards you have in the backlog that you just have to get through. So it can get into the thousands sometimes. But if you separate things to you're just studying this one deck and it only has, what does this only have, 400 notes in it, you're never going to get backlogged that much because it's just the deck. And once you're done with the deck, you can move on to a new one. So now we come to websites like Viki, Crunchyroll, all of that stuff. Absolutely wonderful. Quizlet, Memrise. Memrise is good. Links are all in the description, by the way. This whole document's going to be in the description. You guys can click on it and see whatever works for you. And Memrise specifically is for beginner or intermediate level. Help you learn the Japanese vocab. And it's a very good app for learning vocab. So it uses a lot of visual memory tricks and stuff to help you to learn things. So then the final app that we have here is HelloTalk. Now, HelloTalk is, of course, the language exchange I mentioned before. I can't stress enough how important it is that you use this app. HelloTalk is the only app that I have on this entire list for speaking the language, and that's a shame. Okay, there's others. I use one called Tandem recently, and there's one called iTalk. There's a few others, but HelloTalk is the best, has the most people on it, I think. And so many people in Japan are trying to learn English. If you are willing to help them learn English in exchange for them helping you learn Japanese, it's free. And you don't have to, I mean, it's the best thing ever because it's just a coincidence that you guys happen to meet up and want to share what each other wants. And you guys have something that the other people want. And if you're willing to do that, which I think you should, you're going to your Japanese is going to improve so much, because actually formulating those words and actually speaking them specifically on a daily basis, that's what really solidifies that stuff in your mind, so that you can really remember it when it counts. Because if you just focus on reading and listening, but you're not formulating it with your mouth, it's going to take 3 or 4 times as long to learn this language, because you're never actually using it. And so you'll forget the words that you learn weeks after you learn them, and until you actually need to use it and your mind is forced to recall something because you're in a conversation with someone, that is when you actually know something. And you won't know what you know until you get up and start trying to talk to people. And since we can't be in Japan right now, most of us, Hello Talk is the best thing that we can have right now, unless you have Japanese people in your community that would be willing to do a language exchange with you for free. So Hello Talk, I can't stress enough how important that app is. Now, this is the very last thing right here. Subs to SRS. This is an absolute game changer. This changed my life completely. And you use Subs to SRS with Anki Droid. Now, I can't remember what it's called on iPhone, but on Android, it's called Anki Droid. Subs to SRS is you take subtitle files from a show, anime, movie, whatever, video online, and you plug it into this software. And what the software does is it takes the video that you have to have the video, however you get it. Anyways, it takes the subtitles, also however you get those. There's a few places that I use actually for subtitles. One of them is called Subscene right here. So I use Subscene to download a lot of Japanese subtitles, but there are other resources as well. So you can easily find online subtitles for most of the shows, specifically in Japanese, that you want to watch. And you plug it into this software. Now let me show you what the interface kind of looks like. Okay, so you put your target language subtitles right up top. You say where you want it to output to. You put in your, in my case, English subtitles right here, and then you put the video file right below it. And once you have these things in place, it looks a little complicated. Don't worry about it, especially when you get, down to some of this other stuff like this. This is just kind of showing you what everything does. But these are the most important things. Once you do that, you can preview it, but you hit go, and it kicks you out hundreds of flashcards based on every line of dialogue within the entire show. And it gives you an image for reference, it gives you the text, it gives you audio generated from that video file, and it gives you the English translation. And this is how the spaced repetition works here. If you know it, it takes this long. If you know it, it won't come back for a while. This one will come back just in a few minutes. This app has completely changed my world. This is there's a philosophy within the polyglot language learning community of sentence mining. Now, not everybody is into it. This is something that has worked extremely well for me. It doesn't work for everybody, but getting the best thing that this program can do is it can generate flashcards for you automatically based on things that you want to know, based on things you have decided you want to learn. Like, I don't know what these shows are here, but I have personally flashcards generated from the show Cowboy Bebop. I have flashcards generated from Shirokuma or Polar Bear Cafe. And I have flashcards generated. I've used this for Spanish. I've used this for Korean. I'm currently using it for Korean. And this app is something that will stick with me forever, because whenever I watch something that I like, I can take that video file, put it into this software, and it will generate the flashcards for me so that I can study and basically memorize the entire TV show or the entire episode. That'll give me a baseline for the grammar and vocabulary that will be used for the rest of the show. I usually go back and watch that episode again, and then I try and watch the entire show without subtitles based on actually memorizing the entire first or second episode. Usually I'll do it on the second episode because the first one sets things up. The second one is where the actual normal interactions tend to take place between all of the characters. The first episode isn't always the case. So that is what I do. And SourceForge, this is the website here, subs2srs.sourceforge.net. and you need to use it in tandem with Anki Droid or with some type of space repetition software. And once you do that, it'll just generate all of this automatically for you. So this is how I learn languages now. You start off, and I just want to recap real quick. You start off with Pimsleur, you move on to things like Quizlet and Anki Droid, and you finish off by just watching these TV shows and using this kind of thing, subs to SRS, to generate the more complex and the more intense actual usages of the Japanese language that you're trying to learn within your favorite movies or TV shows. And that is going to generate the kind of motivation for you to keep going, because that's the most important thing when you're learning this language. You need to keep yourself motivated. You can't just say I want to learn it, but when it gets hard and you're in the intermediate stage and you're not making as much progress as you were, and you're just thinking, oh man, why learn 10 more words today when I already know 1,000? You know, when you learn your first 10 words, it's incredible because you literally have learned infinity more words than you knew before. But once you learn the next 10 and then the next 10, you get what we've talked about on the podcast many times, but you get a diminishing return mentally in terms of the reward system that your brain, relies on to stay motivated. It diminishes with every 10 more that you learn, because the first 10 is great, but once you know 3,000 words and then you learn 3,010 words, your ability to understand Japanese doesn't actually improve all that much anymore relative to how it used to improve. But once you pass that stage, and this is what really gets you past that, I recommend just watching the news or something, because that's when you're really in the advanced stage, and that's when you can move on to maybe learning a different language, or stage 4, going to Japan and actually, solidifying your language skills there. But the core 5 resources I use: Memrise, Quizlet, Anki Droid, HelloTalk, Pimsleur, and subs to SRS. And this is what worked for me, guys. This won't work for everybody. But in my case, this was absolutely the best way to learn a language. And I hope that any one of you who thinks that maybe Japanese is something they might want to learn, look into it and use some of these resources that I've talked about here today. I have been studying Japanese for a very long time, and this is the best stuff that's out there that can help you to learn the language and to learn it quick and to stay motivated to continue learning it. That's so important. So thanks for watching this video, guys. You're all beasts, and ganbatte ne.